As already I mentioned, the very purpose of Dharma of course, all different religious traditions, all meant for reduce suffering and increase happiness. So, I usually express all religion are human beings' religion. So, human beings, so the best thing is loving kindness. Our whole life, you see, depend on karuna, from birth till death. So, since all religion are human beings' religion, so all carry the practice of loving kindness, and with that, forgiveness, tolerance, contentment, all these happen. Now, differences, the Indian tradition, lot of sort of explanation about emotion, about mind. Then Buddha himself, Indian, he studied, practiced existing Indian tradition at that time. And then 6 years, you see, he almost fasting, thinking. Then he developed certain, or say, the deeper understanding about reality. So his first expression,
this peaceful, profound, peaceful, non-elaborated, luminous, unconditioned phenomena. This nectar-like teaching I have found, and then.
So then, firstly, as I already mentioned, Four Noble Truths. Then, second Dharma wheel at Rajagiri, the Pranjaparamita. Now, that is something very, very unique. You see, nobody, you see, express or understand about that, only Buddha. So he mentioned
so this profound, peaceful, free from conceptual elaborations, luminous and unconditioned thing, this nectar-like truth I have found.
Pranjaparamita Sutra, he taught, not publicly. So in public, the Tanusum.
The three Pitakas, the three collections of teachings.
The
Tripitaka. Which shows the three trainings, the morality, concentration, and the wisdom. These are the three higher trainings.
Pali tradition, Sanskrit tradition. So these Four Noble Truths and the 37 sort of practice these recorded and in history book mentioned. Then the second Dharma, or say the teaching at Rajagiri, there are selected people. So the usual sort of also the history book, not much mentioned. Because, you know, the Pranjaparamita Sutra, say, you need the intelligence, otherwise difficult to understand. So then the Pranjaparamita Sutra, very name Pranjaparamita, Shiruj Bharatushimba.
The perfection of wisdom.
So now, the first Dharma wheel, generally speaking, something common, rest of all religion. Of course, Nirodha, Gokten, Lamden.
The true cessation and true path.
The more or less, you see, basically is common. And then Pranjaparamita Sutra, you see something very sophisticated and not easily understand. So that he selected sort of disciple. So the history book not mentioned. And then that understand that wisdom was very deep. So then even within, you see, follower of Sanskrit tradition, some people find little difficult. And then also there is some danger to become Leninism,
nihilist.
So he taught third Dharma wheel. So make some distinction. So now the text which I sort of discussing, that is the Nagarjuna's, you see, Madhyamika Mulakarika's also the commentary. So that mainly second Dharma wheel, the Shunyata. Although the word Shunyata, I think all Buddhists, I think, heard, and perhaps you see, but you see detailed, you see explanation about Shunyata. So that afterward, Nagarjuna, his, I think, very purpose of his sort of reincarnate in this sort of planet. He, I think, several lives he determined about the Shunyata, Patita Samupanda. So after he came in India, then gradually, you see, he practice. So according to his own sort of experience, he wrote Madhyamika Mulakarika, a wonderful text. The Madhyamika Mulakarika in original Sanskrit still there, isn't it?
No.
Oh. So I received one teaching from Sanskrit sort of text. There are some important point. The Sanskrit text really, you see, give you, I think, deeper meaning. I received that Kunulamar Machi. For example,
with regard to this verse from the Mula Madhyamika Karika, which says the elimination of karma and delusions, there is through that there is liberation and so forth.
When he mentioned, you see, two meaning.
So there's the last line could be interpreted in two ways. Either as instrumental case, ended by emptiness or ended within emptiness. So by emptiness shows the path, the true path, and within emptiness indicates that of this true cessation.
I'm wondering the Madhyamika Kasada, Tikasa.
Madhyamika Avatara.
Madhyamika Avatara. Whether is original Sanskrit still there or not, I'm wondering. Sanskrit, the Kasada. Because Madhyamika Mulukarika, as I mentioned earlier, their original Sanskrit. They now this Dharmakirtis, Umanjukva, I'm wondering whether you see they exist or not, the original Sanskrit. Do you know? Umanjukva, original Sanskrit, there or not? I think worthwhile. Some Indian scholar, I think, should research some, maybe like Varanasi University, Sanskrit University there, maybe some original Sanskrit text, maybe. So you should find out. Then the among the sort of intellectual circle, the Sanskrit consider something Kasota, highly educated people sort of language. So the Madhyamika Mulukarika, the Nagarjuna Sanskrit, and then Chandrakirtis, you see, Madhyamika Avatara, you see, the Sanskrit combined may be useful. Okay. So that's for you, not for me. Now too old, study Sanskrit. Even you see Hindi, I really want, you see,
Learn Hindi.
More Hindi word, but Thora. And only Hindi one word, kana. And Tangchangpani, Garampani. Otherwise, you see, I really now, these days, I really feel, as soon as I reach here, I should start study Hindi. Now too late. So that's you should also research the original Sanskrit, then combine Nagarjuna's text and the Chandrakirti's text together, very useful. And then Chandrakirti's, you see, commentary about, you see, the Nagarjuna's, also the
Madhyamika
Mulukarika, two books. One, this Umanjukva.
This Madhyamika Avatara.
Mainly the essence and also, you see, when Nagarjuna wrote the Mulakarika, the Chitta Mantra's philosophy not yet developed. So after Nagarjuna passed away, then Arya Asanga and then some other scholar who follow Arya Asanga's sort of view. Then in this text, Umanjukva, You see, in the 6th chapter, there are a lot of argument and argument about Chidamantra's philosophy, like that. So this shows among the Indian intellectuals, you see, generation to generation, you see, they really fully utilize their wisdom, their intelligence. So, Umanjukba
is entering the middle way.
It's
It's like a meaning commentary. Meaning commentary.
Then Nagar the Chandakirti's Chiksel, Chiksel.
Prasanapada.
Chiksel. Yeah. I'm wondering whether original Sanskrit there or not.
Yes.
Chiksel. There.
Yeah.
Original Sanskrit. And wonderful. Chiksel, the Madim Mulam Kazare, Madimika Muluk. So there was a Chingji.
Is word for word explanation.
The Chiksel, the
Prasanapada is like a word for word commentary on Mula Madhyamaka Karika, and Mas Madhyamaka Avatara is a meaning commentary.
Wonderful. So these two books wrote by Chandakirti about Nagarjuna's Madhyamaka Mulakarika's commentary, I think very useful, very useful. So I'm quite familiar. Umanjukba Rangdel, his
the auto commentary, own commentary
about Umanjukba, I'm quite familiar. Very good. Really wonderful. Then the Chiksel,
Prasanapada,
I just
clear words.
I'm keen to study or to read. So since yesterday, I start reading Chiksel.
Prasanapada.
So the one great Tibetan scholar, he mentioned, study, even you die next day, still today, it's worthwhile to study. So this life now ending, therefore, not much sort of, may not be much use, but study some knowledge through study, end of this life, tremendous effect for next life. Many of these ancient scholars, not just one life, many lives. Some say some sort of 500 lives. Such sort of stories there. So
even if you were to die tomorrow, you should still pursue study, education. It is like depositing your money in a bank so that you gain the profits, and you can take it when you need it in the next life.
Start reading Chiksel.
So, Prasanapada.
I received oral transmission from Chisur Buche, like that. So now,
Chisur Rinpoche means Rizong, Gyabje Rizong Rinpoche.
basically, as you know, the very purpose of this sophisticated philosophy, all these, since we do not want suffering, but suffering come with its own causes. So now, if we want anyone who want to overcome suffering, we must go deeper level, the ultimate source of suffering. That, according Buddha Dharma and the Madhyamaka philosophy, all, you see, the ultimate source of suffering is ignorance. So there is a possibility to remove ignorance through wisdom, through study. 这个啥？啥？这举了面这里，就是什么呢？噶。
조상권이 초치다.
주물루부로
that the defilements are adventitious. From the Uttara Tantra, Mahayana Uttara Tantra, it says,
all the wrong views and destructive emotion, you see, based on ignorance, do not know the ultimate reality. So, it is always possible to remove that ignorance through wisdom, through panya. So one text, you see, mentioned all the negative emotions, you see, the out of ignorance. So any ignorance always antidote the wrong view, the right view is always the antidote. So now question is whether we study and practice the right view or not. Otherwise, you see, all wrong view, no matter how powerful, you see, no sound basis. The wisdom, they understand the reality. Now that, at the beginning, no matter how difficult, but we can study, and then gain more deeper experiences. That much I also used to have some experience, decade by decade, thinking. So now, as Nagarjuna says,
through the elimination of karma and delusions, there is liberation, and karma and delusions arise from conceptual mind, thought, and they in turn are rooted in elaborations, fabrication, and that is ended by emptiness. So, having done this critical analysis into the teaching and the reality of things, I can say that I have developed the experience of the path to the level where it comes through some kind of effort to reach that of the true cessation and true path. So from this kind of experience, I may be able to say that the true cessation and true path are possible. So from this experience, which is like a simulated experience of so I may be able to say that I can say that it is possible for one to teach others or tell others that true cessation and true paths are something which are possible for us to develop within ourselves. And so for the last 50 years, 50, 60 years, having given thought to this teaching and integrated the teaching within myself, I can say that you can actually make transformation within yourself along the path. And even in dreams, you can remember the different points of the Dharma. And so first we need to proceed with the process of studying the teaching. So that means listen to the teachings, and then through reflection, reflecting over the teaching, reflecting on the teaching over and over again, you can develop the conviction, and then from there you can go on to do meditation so that you develop this simulated experience of the Dharma. And therefore, you can proceed along the path as it is referred by the mantra of the Heart Sutra. Go perfectly and go perfectly beyond, and so forth. And then at the end of the 6th chapter, the third last verse of the 6th chapter, so verse number 224, 25, and 226. So we are born human beings in this life, and particularly, and on top of that, we are born in a land where the Buddha Dharma has spread. The Buddha Dharma is said to survive for 500 times 10, 5,000 years. And so we have the facilities for us to pursue the teaching of the Buddha. And we have the Kanjur and Denjur texts, these translated words of the Buddha, and the exegetical treatises written by Indian masters. So we have these facilities, and therefore we need to pursue the Dharma through the triple process of listening to the teaching, or studying it, and reflection and meditation, so that gradually you'll be able to reach the path leading to that of enlightenment. And then the final verse of the 6th chapter would be something that is a reality for us. And so it says, and like a king of swans, soaring ahead of other accomplished swans, with white wings of conventional and ultimate truth spread wide, and so forth.
He's Venerable Kalden. He is from Bombay. Now he studies since 2008 at Seraj Monastery. Venerable Kalden, please ask your question.
So, oh, yes. Oh. Yes.
Namo Buddha, Your Holiness. My question is, the entity that has the potential to appear as water to humans, as nectar to gods, and blood and pus to hungry ghosts, can Your Holiness...
Korsa. Ka. Oh. 추부 룬을 이단 당로 양사디. 네, 가지겠어요. 관점 체리 리포트잖아.
Continue your question. Finish.
다 관점 피스기 변화 아다.
So in quantum physics, they talk about appearance, what is apparent and what is the reality. This is well known. So on the apparent level, we have the water, earth, water, fire, and so forth, wind. Whereas without staying at that apparent level, but if you go deeper into the reality, then whatever matter there is, they are made up of 8 different, what are known as the 8 different substances or
상금, 충금, 맹금, 룽금, 난개감 디디 배지 여대 인도산에
so within that deeper or the subtler level, there are these different substances or
레데 저 연구를라
such as space and so forth.
아니 그게 뒤틀어 가는 이네 그추 가서 실외 정신 렌시 실외 정신 디강도 상 상당의 연구 양그
So when you have a water, for example, something that is liquid, when you think about it, it may become clearer to your mind. And so when you think about wind element, for example, it may appear to you more clearly. So there may be a substance that is in the cup, for example. It may have its own potencies. So on top of that potency or the efficacy of the object itself, the liquid, so when different sentient beings look at that liquid, they may appear differently to these different beings.
The second question, sorry.
Yes, now?
The second question, Your Holiness, is by Shalini Mahajan. Shalini Mahajan is a conservation architect from Zanzibar. She lives in Africa these days. Please, Shalini.
Good morning, Your Holiness. My question is, how should a person suffering from acute pain or tragedy practice the wisdom of emptiness at that time? Because at that moment, the pain or suffering seems so objectively real. Thank you.
Now, the physical level, some pain. Then try to think the very nature of also the pain. The shunyada does not mean the children mebekis marwa.
So when you talk about shunyata, it negates the object that you are actually critically analyzing.
It exists as appears. So now understand the nature of pain is emptiness. That, you see, not necessarily sort of effect pain. But now here, pain experienced by mind and physical, the Luigi.
So there are these cognitions or consciousness on the physical level, the bodily consciousness, and then mental consciousness. And when you have pain, you also develop some kind of an exaggerated outlook on it. And then and that in turn happens because of holding on to or grasping at some kind of an independent objective existence of the pain. And so the pain itself may not just go away. But if you actually are able to bring to mind that the pain does not exist objectively, independently, but though there is this experience that appears to you, it doesn't have any objective, substantial, objective existence in and of itself, and that may help you to reduce the effect of that pain on your mind. And so the view of emptiness helps you in that way by reducing your grasping at the pain. So if suffering were not there, the Buddha, it doesn't make sense for the Buddha to say that this is the true suffering. So when you have suffering, we also develop, and we also have some kind of a negative reaction to it. And therefore, as it is said in the quantum physics also, that things have no objective existence, it'll help to reduce the pain, the reaction. So the Buddha taught suffering, the origin of suffering, and then the antidote to suffering, which is the true path or teaching of emptiness. As I quoted earlier too, karma and delusions, ending the karma and delusions, there is liberation, and karma and delusion arise from conceptual thought. And so that means the exaggerated outlook. So in the 12th chapter of Mula Madhyamaka Karika by Master Nagarjuna, he also mentions that the attachment, anger, and confusion arise from the conceptual thought. And this in turn arises due to some kind of a strong clinging to some kind of a true existence in things. So when we experience pain or pleasure, that we also have this exaggerated perception of it, which arises through this clinging to true existence in things. But what we need to do is think that things do not exist the way they appear to you, as if they have some kind of objective independent existence. And then when you are able to understand that or gain insight into it, then it'll help you to reduce this reaction to the pain.
Thank you.
Okay.
So, Your Holiness, the third question is Chune Dolma. She is from Ladakh, and presently she is studying her master's in psychology from Chandigarh University. Chune Dolma.
Good morning, Your Holiness. My question is, why do we feel superficial when we try to meditate on Buddha, and how do we need to establish a sense of reality so that superficiality will not demotivate us to meditate on Buddha? Thank you, Your Holiness.
So it's a matter of familiarizing your mind with it. Therefore, you need first to go through the triple process of learning, studying, and reflection and meditation, which means familiarizing your mind with that point of meditation over and over again. And through that meditation and familiarization, what happens is you develop a simulated experience at some point. When you put effort, you may have some experience of the that path or the experience, and then it becomes effortless experience. So there are some people who, having learned the Dharma for a long time, but not really integrated the teaching within themselves, at some point they come to say, oh, of course the teaching says so, but, you know. So we talk about conventionalities of things. Of course, these things that appear to us also are tinged with some kind of an erroneous perception. But we need to train our mind so that we can reduce the exaggerated outlook or the inappropriate mentation of the experiences. So the Buddha also was said to have taken medicine, and Master Nagarjuna also has written texts on medicine. And within the 5 major subjects that are counted in the Tibetan tradition, the medicine is one of them. And then another one is that of the arts and crafts. So making mugs and cups and so forth made of clay, and also the arts made by the painters and artists. And technology today is a result of art. Is part of art. And so these also are relevant to our happiness and fulfillment. So when these are used as tools to harm others, what we can do is, through the teaching of the Buddha, we can actually tame, discipline our mind and develop a good heart towards others. And so when you have suffering, you can help to reduce the suffering by meditation on emptiness. Whatever suffering there is in the world comes from selfish attitude, wishing for oneself to be happy. Whatever happiness there is in the world all come from wishing others to be happy. Unless you switch your happiness or joy with the suffering of others, leave alone reaching Buddhahood. Even in samsara, there's no happiness. And so what happens to us is we neglect the well-being of others and focus on our one's selfish we are selfishly motivated, and therefore there is all kinds of suffering that we experience. And so, as we say in the prayer for bodhicitta and taking bodhisattva vows, in order to fulfill the interests of oneself and others, I shall develop bodhicitta. And which Master Shantideva says also, that which intelligent being would feel this despair or by riding the horse of bodhicitta, which leads one from bliss to bliss. And then the teaching also says that all the destructive emotions are rooted in this ignorance, which grasp at some true independent existence in things and self. And when this can be uprooted through the wisdom of emptiness, and in the Pramana Vartika, it is mentioned that all these stains or the defilements in our mind are adventitious. And therefore, we can say that the clinging or the grasping at true existence in things is not an intrinsic nature of mind, in the intrinsic nature of the mind itself, but the mind's intrinsic nature is luminosity and awareness. And therefore, these stains or defilements can be overcome. And so the suchness of the mind, which is the empty nature of the mind itself, because the mind is empty of any intrinsic existence, inherent existence, the mind itself, as per se, is not, and the stains are not in the intrinsic nature of the mind itself. And so when you think along these lines, you can have a sense that the Buddhahood is possible. to attain for us.
And uzu jawurda.
So we need to be diligent and persevere in our practice.
And pejite. And the
So we should study the teaching for years and years, and not just leave it at just dry, empty words, but give thought to it, the teaching. So what the scientists, modern scientists are lacking is in the past they focused on matter, external objects, but towards the end of the 20th century, the scientists also have shifted, their attention, and they have taken more interest in learning about the mind and emotions more and more. And so for this, we have the Indian tradition of mind and emotions. Other than that, they have no, they do not have any avenue. And so I have urged these Tibetan secular schools, school children to study Lorik, which is the study of mind, where we find difference between the primary mind and those of the mental factors, and conceptual mind and non-conceptual mind. And within the mental factors also, there are those of the analysis and investigation, which the difference between these two is one actually looks at the things, analyze or examines things rather roughly, and the other in more detail. And so it's important to study these texts on Lorik and so forth.
Thank you. Your Holiness, the fourth question is by Jaya Iyer from Delhi. Jaya is an artist and a teacher.
Hello.
Good morning, His Holiness.
Oh.
My question is, can self-compassion, true compassionate attitude towards self and forgiveness help in generating bodhicitta?
So with regard to bodhicitta, there is this method of developing it through equaling and exchanging self and others. Just like you cherish yourself, it is said that you should cherish all other sentient beings. It doesn't. We don't say that you should abandon cherishing yourself. So, because you need also to attain Buddhahood. So, when you say hold others more dearer and abandon yourself, it doesn't mean literally not to work for yourself as such. So the Buddha himself did the 6-year austerity practice with this aspiration for his own enlightenment as well. So what you need to get rid of is this extreme self-cherishing attitude. The reasonable cherishing of oneself is not something that you need to abandon. So experience or the cultivation of bodhicitta helps oneself in order to help others. In order to help others, you need to have the experience within yourself Without developing the experience of bodhicitta and so forth within yourself, how can you help others out of suffering? It's like becoming a teacher of a school, teacher in a school. Without knowing the subject that you are supposed to teach, how can you become a teacher to teach the students? So if you have no knowledge of the subject, you cannot teach others. So here, with regard to bodhicitta, first you develop the experience within yourself through practice and training. So though you may say that after all sentient beings have become enlightened, I will become enlightened. But it helps to develop your courage to work for others. But it doesn't really happen in that way. So there are three types of bodhicitta, which are like the king-like bodhicitta, boatman-like bodhicitta, and the shepherd-like bodhicitta. So first, you try to know the causes of suffering, and then get rid of the suffering. And from your own experience, you share the teaching to others. As Nagarjuna and Aryadeva and so forth, they cultivated bodhicitta and also meditated on emptiness, and so they are on the path to enlightenment. And through these practice of bodhicitta and wisdom of emptiness, there is no talk about going to lower that of the hell realm. So you need to have the courage, the determination to work for others. Just as Lama Chapa says, and bodhicitta, with regard to bodhicitta, it leads you away from the lower realms of existence and leads you to the higher realms of existence. And it leads you to the state of deathlessness. So without having the experience of the path within yourself, the bodhicitta and the wisdom of emptiness, how can you help others? There's no way.
Thank you.
So, Your Holiness, the fifth question is by Arushi Singhal. Arushi is a research scholar from Delhi.
Good morning, Your Holiness. My question is everything is impermanent and conditioned in this world, then how do we justify the state of nirvana? Is it momentary or permanent, conditioned or unconditioned? Thank you, Your Holiness.
So with regard to liberation, nirvana, as I said before, when you try to look for the identity, identity of liberation. It's what you find is it is the emptiness of the mind. So whatever object you have or you take, you find that it is absent of any existence in and of itself, that it is dependent on other factors. But this empty nature of the mind is not something that is a compounded phenomena, which means that is brought about by something that is brought about by temporary causes and conditions as such. Whereas our misconception of reality, seeing things as if they have some kind of a core essence in and of themselves, is because of a distorted view. And so, the fact that things exist by way of dependence, by way of relation to others is something that is nature, natural. So when we say that emptiness is also dependent, it doesn't mean it is conditioned by causes and conditions as such, but that it exists by way of dependence on other factors. As Master Nagarjuna says, whatever is dependent is said to be empty. So when you understand emptiness, it helps to get rid of the view of permanence. And when you understand the meaning of emptiness as dependence, it helps to do away with both the extreme views. So within dependence, with regard to dependence, there are three types of dependences. One is the causal dependence, and then the other is the dependence on the parts, a whole depending on its parts, and then the final one is that things are dependent on nominal designation.
Thank you, Your Holiness. The first 5 questioners were on Your Holiness's screen. Now I'm going to, the next questioner is not on your screen, so I'm afraid I will have to put her question. The question is by Sewang Lamo. She's a student from Ladakh. The question is, how are dependent origination and emptiness two sides of the same coin?
시바도 시자 유도 유진.
So consciousness or cognition and objects of knowledge are dependent on each other. When we say consciousness, what it shows is that there is something that is to be known, that you become conscious about. And so, in this way, on the basis of dependent on that object of knowledge, you have a consciousness or cognition of it. So whatever thing you take, you can talk about it in relation to others, and therefore you can talk about mutual dependence of things. So with cognition or consciousness, you know things. And because of that, you can talk about object of knowledge. An object of knowledge is not something solidly out there, which is independent from your cognition. And then the objects of knowledge are also designated by our labels. So of course the animals do not use language like us. So we as humans use language and give names to things. And particularly we find them mentioned in the Indian classical masters' texts. So we make lots of distinctions between phenomena as being this and that. There are lots of categories that are made of the objects of knowledge by the Indian masters. Of course, those following the theistic religious traditions do not maybe have to bother about this. So what these show is that we need to have knowledge, develop knowledge within ourselves in order to get rid of our mental afflictions and all these shortcomings that are within ourselves. And without knowledge, you cannot do that. And then there is division of object of knowledge into the obvious objects or phenomena, and then the slightly hidden, and such as slightly hidden phenomena, such as emptiness, impermanence, subtle impermanence, and so forth, which must be proved through logical reasoning. And then there are those categories of phenomena, the phenomena which come into the category of these extremely hidden phenomena, and for which we need to believe in the testament of people who have the experience of them. So, for example, the Buddha shared his own experience, and then Master Nagarjuna, if you read his writings, we can see that we can see his understanding of the teaching, and that leads us to the understanding of Buddha's teaching. And so in this way we develop a trust based on this kind of reasoning.
Yes.
Your Holiness, the next question is by Tejal Shah. She is doing the master's course at Tibet House, Nalanda master's course. The question is, can Your Holiness please explain how the mind and its object are mutually dependent?
So these two, the emptiness and objects, the dependent origination, help complement each other without contradiction. So those things appear in a certain way, which is to say that they appear as if they have some kind of a endurance and solid existence. They do not exist that way. They are merely nominal. But when we say they are nominal, what we mean is that though we may say, or we give this name to the object, but still, when we look at the object, it appears as if there is some kind of an essential existence in and of itself, and that's not true. So what you find is that things exist merely by way of our designation. So apart from that, you cannot have an existence. And so there are these different reasonings that are used, the tetralemma reasoning and so forth. And also the reason of the lack of one and many. And then the king of reasoning, which is dependent origination. So things per se are not denied their existence, but what is denied is that they exist independently or inherently in and of themselves. So in the Madhyamaka Avatara, so in the verse, Madhyamaka Avatara, chapter 6, verse number 34 and 35, 36, this shows these reasonings, where it says, if things were to have any inherent existence, then there is the logical absurdity to say that the Arya being's meditative equipoise would be a cause for destruction of entities and so forth. And so, apart from being dependently arisen, nothing can be said to have any essential existence in and of themselves. And so, they are merely designated. So, emptiness means that things are absent of any inherent existence, independent existence. And when you understand emptiness, what you understand is that things are dependently originated. And therefore, as Master Tsongkhapa says, at some point when you, without having to alternate between these two, when you are able to bring this understanding, the insight into emptiness through dependence and dependence through emptiness, then you have completed the analysis or into the nature of things, the view of emptiness. And so whatever you take as your object for analysis, you will see that they are all dependently originated, and therefore they lack any inherent or independent existence. So when you say, because things are dependently originated, they have no essential existence in and of themselves. So the Prasangikas say that we are dependently originated. Sorry. Even the Savatantrika Madhyamakas do say that things are dependently originated. Whereas they do still assert some objectivity in things, as I quoted the other day from Jnanagarbha's Two Truths. Things do exist the way they appear to us, he says. And so, not being contented with the appearance, but they actually wish to point at some essence in the object. So whereas for the Prasangika Madhyamakas, because the emptiness and dependent origination complement each other, the mere fact that things appear to you, that there is the appearance of things, would induce the understanding that they do not have any essential existence in and of themselves. So even quantum physicists do talk about the appearance and the reality, that appearance is not the reality.
Your Holiness, the next question is by Raj Barua from Delhi. He asks that to understand the depths of the Buddha Dharma, most of the bhikshus study for about 10 years. He says that a lay practitioner living in a city might not get such an opportunity to study for 10 years. Now, to understand Madhyamika philosophy and Chittamatra philosophy, their views that will eventually lead to a complete understanding of emptiness, what are the most important root texts that they should study?
Oh, yes, now,
so mainly, you need to cultivate bodhicitta, as I said yesterday. Because of our extreme self-cherishing attitude, we cause suffering to ourselves. And therefore, Bodhisattvacharya Avatara by Master Shantideva should be studied. And with regard to the ninth chapter, chapter on wisdom, which you may not be able to study in great detail like those of the monks in the great institutions, but you can still learn the essence of this chapter. And then chapter 8, which shows the shortcomings of self-cherishing attitude. And there's debate between self-cherishing attitude and the attitude of cherishing others over oneself, which is very profound in it. So this should be studied. And then you should also study Mula Madhyamaka Karika, the fundamental verses of the middle way by Master Nagarjuna, as well as Madhyamaka Avatara and Prasanapada. So there are many Tibetan masters of the past, like Master Tsongkhapa. He has written 5 major texts on the insight, on the Madhyamaka view, which are the insight sections of Lamrim Chemo, the great treatise of the middle, the path to enlightenment, and then the intermediate, the medium stages of the path to enlightenment. And then his explanation of the Madhyamaka Avatara, illumination of the thought, and then the ocean of reasoning, which is his commentary on Master Nagarjuna's fundamental verses of the middle way, and then the treatise differentiating between the provisional and definitive meanings of the sutras. And so texts like these should be studied. It is said that when you read it one time, you will have some insight. You will understand one point, and if you read it 10 times, you will gain 10 insights into the text. And so you should not just study these texts for a short while, but study these texts continuously. Though you may not be able to engage in debate like those of the monks in the big monasteries, you should still study these texts. And regarding these great, the monks of the great monastic institutions, they may be good at debate, but when it comes to actually integrating the teaching within themselves, they do not stand up to the measure of the teachings. They have not. You'll find that they have not actually integrated the teaching within themselves as much as they can talk about it. So Trishi Rinpoche used to tell a joke about geishis. They're like the flowers that grow on the tree without any fruit. And Jesu Milarepa has said that in terms of the ultimate truth, from the point of view of the ultimate truth, so when Jesu Milarepa had a debate or argument with Tsering Chenga, he said that not only the Buddhas, but even not only these obstacles, the obstructing beings, but even the Buddha does not exist. So when Jesu Milarepa was meditating in his cave, from a crack in the rock, he heard some noise, and then it distracted him, and he looked, and then there was this spirit and which actually turned into a dog or something and bit Jetsun Milarepa. And so he had an argument with this Dog Sinmo, the spirit of the rock. So he said that in the ultimate, from the point of ultimate reality, not only you, this rock spirit, but even Buddha does not exist. So he is actually exhibiting or showing his own realization of emptiness. Though he did not engage in debate like these monks of the big monastic institutions, but he had actually given thought to the essence of the teaching of the Buddha. So some of his sayings, the verses that he had recited or uttered, are very profound in terms of understanding of the emptiness. So he had this upsurge of realization through the integration of the teaching within himself, and therefore using logical procedures such as consequences, the logical consequences and so forth, and syllogisms. Although you may not be able to use them to a great extent, still the books like Bodhisattva Charyavatara, and then also the other books that I mentioned, as well as the 5 texts by, particularly the 5 texts by Master Tsongkhapa. Chögyam Rinpoche used to say that if you have really studied these 5 texts on Madhyamaka philosophy by Master Tsongkhapa, you will have a good confidence in the Madhyamaka view. And then the teachings on primordial purity in the Nyingma, and then the Mahamudra in the Kagyu, and then the union of clarity and emptiness in the Sakya tradition, and so forth. Maybe different names. So there is the Shije, the pacification practice or tradition, and Dzogchen, the great perfection, and so forth. There may be these different names of the different in the different traditions, but all of them converge to the same point. Benjen Lobsang Chögyam has said, when an experienced yogi who is learned in the scriptures do examine these different traditions, all of these traditions converge to the same point in intent. So in terms of words, using words so that you are precise in terms of language, the Gelug texts are more clearer in terms of expositing on the teachings.
Your Holiness, there's the question, last two questions, Your Holiness. This is the 9th question, which says, how should we motivate ourselves in times of distress?
On the one hand, if we have a choice, we can make our choice. So there's no choice for us. But however bad a situation we may have been born into, we still have the Buddha Dharma with us. So you have an opportunity to still pursue the teaching. So if you leave, if you actually avoid pursuing the teaching, then where would you lead yourself in the next lives? And so whatever circumstances you may be in, whatever difficulties you may be in, you should make the right choice to pursue the teaching so that you may be able to leave a good imprint on your mind for this teaching, so that the opportunity to meet with the teaching becomes better and better in the next lives. So the teaching that we have today of the Buddha Shakyamuni, who was an incomparable teacher, and then there are other Buddhas in other planets, other world systems. And so after dying from this life, in this life, from this world, we may be born into other world systems where the Buddhas teach. And so what we must not do is feel totally demoralized and discouraged to do anything, because that will not lead you out of misfortune. You must be determined to pursue the teaching, thinking that I have found this precious human life now, and when else should I pursue the teaching, if not now, while I am a human being in this life? And so, if with that kind of determination, if you pursue the teaching and integrate the teaching within yourself, there is an opportunity always to make progress in the next lives and become better and better.
Last question for today. It says, can you briefly explain the different levels of view up till the ultimate view of Prasangika?
So for an easy to study text, there are in the Tibetan tradition a genre of teaching called the text called Drupta. So Kunken Jamyang Shepa great treatise on the philosophical systems of India would be very good to study. So it would be good to study that, because it goes through the different philosophical schools. Yore. This book is translated into English. His Holiness is asking, I think Professor Jeffrey Hopkins has translated it.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, Your Holiness, that was the last question.
Yes.
You want? We ask more?
Sorry. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Holiness, for accepting our request for teachings on Mula Madhyamika Avtara, Madhyamika Avtara. From the 2012, Your Holiness, you have been teaching us the various Nalanda masters for such a long time. Dharamshala, Mumbai, Sankesa, Bodh Gaya, and now even virtually you have taught us, Your Holiness. We thank you from the bottom of our hearts, and we promise to bring these teachings to our universities, to our students in schools. We make a promise that we will bring it, Your Holiness, to this ancient land of India, where it comes from.
Now, present.
Thank you.
Epidemic. Pandemic.
Because of this problem, I think end of this year, or next year, things, you see, I think must be changed. So I'm very, very eager go to the
The temple,
and also
Buddhist
you
temple
see,
here, the main temple.
End of this year, I determined to go to Buddha Gaya. Then you see, give some teaching. So this body, another 15, 20 years. So I'm determined to say, talk. So it is the result or purpose of my own practice is try to share with more people. So I'm ready, I'm determined. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Holiness. Please live very, very long.
Thank you.
And keep teaching us.
Thank you. As I mentioned yesterday, also I think this Buddhist text, Nalendra Master's text, you see, one portion we should consider academic subject. That is not only for Buddhist, but non-Buddhist, non-believer, or you see these texts which mention about our mind, about you see the reality, these things, and how to sort of tackle our emotion. These are considered as a academic subject. Shunyata, emptiness, that also, you see, we should consider academic subject. Non-believer, you see, if we explain and this is some experience, then these people also, you see, their raw emotion can be reduced. So you see, these we should not consider as a Buddhist text about Buddhist thing. No, this is academic subject. Thank you.